Hey guys, and how about we talk Marvel's Daredevil? That's right, not the comic, but the Netflix original, so let's talk about it. And yeah, not an anime, this is actually like a TV show, except, you know, not aired on TV, just maybe streamed through Netflix. First, I want to say that I'm not sponsored or anything, but I think the Netflix is fantastic. I've watched so many, you know, we've all binged, right? Maybe not all of us, but I've binged a lot on a good number of shows or just movies, and Netflix is fantastic, but apparently they're so great that they're able to come up with all these Netflix originals now, and I'm pretty sure that Daredevil was one of them. And I had a really good time watching this. For your information, in case you're curious about it for yourself, again, I think it's only available on Netflix. Its rating is TV mature. I only know that as an American rating. If there's another rating for, like, you know, British or whatever standards, I don't know it, but I know that at least in America it's TV MA, so there's that. There are 13 episodes, each one is about an hour long, and you know, I enjoyed it. I finished it really rather quickly. I think it only took me a few days, because again, I think only 2 days even, maybe 3, because I just sat down and watched a lot of it. But you know, really good. In fact, I think most of the times when I've done a Let's Talk, I've had my opinion on it, but then there's like 1 or 2 things that I really focused on that I thought should have been different. I don't really have a thing like that for Daredevil. I just pretty much liked it all around. I mean, I have my little complaints here and there, but it was a good show. So just for the basics, because you should know this coming into it, or, you know, or I just expect you to, or you learn about it pretty early on. But, you know, Marvel's Daredevil, if you're not familiar with Marvel's Daredevil, he's a superhero who he lost his sight in an accident, but all of his other senses were like greatly enhanced. And so he becomes a vigilante. You know, he goes out despite being blind, and he kicks crime's butt. So it's a cool superhero show. And another thing that I think is important to make note of is that recently, I think with Dark Knight being like the most popular to really set the trend, the trilogy, you know, this superhero show is more gritty, you know, it's darker, it's more realistic, I think. And so you have to be aware that, like, it's not all sunshine, the hero wins the day, like, all the time. And there are 3 scenes in particular that I feel I should warn you about, because I found them particularly gruesome. I won't go into details right here, because this is the spoiler-free section. Oh, by the way, there are going to be spoilers pretty soon. But, you know, you have to be aware that it is a darker story, even though it is, you know, about a superhero and everything. And there's definitely violence, and there is some really rather graphic parts, I thought. Again, 3 in particular come to mind. But yeah, it was a good show. Like, those scenes didn't, you know, turn me away from the show. It's just something you should be aware of if you're looking into it yourself. I would say this is not a show for kids, you know, or young people, or people who are easily influenced. You know, because there are violent things like that. Like, there is a psychopath as, you know, the main antagonist. I'm pretty sure he's a psychopath. So be aware. Honestly, I'm almost at the done of my little review, I think, you know, just looking back on the show. It has been a while, so I'll admit that I have forgotten a lot of things, and I didn't really go back and refresh too much of my memory. But I think that I'm at the spoiler-free, or the end of the spoiler-free part. Like, at this point, to talk about anything else, I kind of have to give you guys details. So, if you haven't, you know, if you don't want to go any further, if you want to watch the show for yourself now without learning anything else, you should stop here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it and all that. Go enjoy a good show. If you don't mind spoilers, or if you've already seen it and you just want to hear a few other little things, because I'm probably not going to go, you know, cover anything big, but, you know, feel free to stick around. So let's do it. Last chance to avoid spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's talk about Daredevil some more. So I'm gonna go in no particular order here, but let's start with Fisk. Yes, Fisk, Kingpin, big baddie of the series. To kind of jump around a little bit, I actually like this format as opposed to, like, in a movie, because in a movie you have like 2.5 hours tops kind of deal, well, not tops, but you know what I mean, in average, to really flesh out characters, you know, to develop a plot and everything. This one, again, 13 episodes, each an hour long, so there's plenty of time to give, you know, light to these different characters. But Fisk, I never really understood his motives. I never really understood what he was trying to accomplish. I was confused about whether he was lying or not, because, I mean, here's the thing. We see Fisk as a child. We see the abuse that he had to face under his father and what happened with his father. Again, this is a spoiler. If you don't want to hear this particular part, just cover your ears until I'm done covering mine. But, you know, Fisk, he had to actually, like, brutally kill his father. Like, we see that in a flashback. He takes a hammer to his father's head, like, over and over again while he's screaming, you know, this phrase that his father had used to encourage him to also be bad, kind of deal. So it was pretty graphic to me. Like, it was bad, it was ugly, and, you know, so I could see why Fisk kind of turned into the man he did. And we're good there, so if you covered your ears, awesome. I hope that worked out for you. But yeah, so I could see like why Fisk kind of became that kind of person that he was. But he talks about how he wants to better the city. Like, he loves this city even for all the bad that it is, and he wants to make it good. I mean, better, that kind of deal. I don't know how he planned to do that, or how he thought that what he was doing would actually accomplish anything about making the city better. And the thing is, I don't think he was lying. I don't think he was saying, oh, I want to make the city better, but he's just going about destroying it or whatever. I think he genuinely... Can you guys hear that? There's a car alarm. Skip ahead! Does it stop? Okay, I think it stopped. Alright. So yeah, I didn't think he was lying when he said he wanted to better the city. But I didn't see how he thought that he actually was bettering the city. And maybe they explained it and I missed it, or they explained it and I forgot it. But thinking back on it now, I remember being unsure of his motivations and everything, and I'm still unsure of his motivations and everything. So that was one part I never really understood. Why Fisk was doing all that he was doing, and why he believed that it was what he should be doing. Which isn't a flaw in his character, I don't think, because as long as a character can justify their own actions to themselves, that's typically fine. And I feel like he did that. I just wanted to know, as a viewer, what exactly his thoughts were. And again, I very well could have missed it, but this is what I have to work with for a review. And I say review, with quotes, because I am critiquing stuff. I'm looking back on my experience having watched the show, but I'm not like a critic. I wouldn't call myself a critic, and this isn't some fancy posh review or anything. It's just, again, I watched it. I'm sharing my opinions and what I recall. It's not perfect. It is totally biased because they're my opinions. Opinions are by definition biased. So hence the quotes. Another thing I liked about Fisk, though, was the fact that he was already there causing trouble before Murdoch, Daredevil, started his vigilante business kind of deal. I say business, but he wasn't charging custom. I just meant, yeah. Fisk was just already, a big bad guy. It wasn't because Daredevil started doing stuff that Fisk is someone needs to go and set this guy straight. No, he was already there. And Daredevil Murdoch didn't even become Daredevil, the vigilante that he did, in order to thwart Kingpin. They actually just kind of learned about each other along the way, and they're like, yeah, we don't like this other guy, we're gonna have to deal with him. So it's kind of fun differing from the superhero movies, because usually it's one was created, just before the other, and they influenced the other, or they immediately set sights on the other. But this one's kind of just it happened that way. And part of that I know is because Kingpin, his name was never given out, it was a guarded secret kind of deal. He just didn't tell people on the streets. So that was obviously part of why, Murdoch didn't know about Fisk right away. But still. Also, Fisk's wife is crazy. I know love makes you do stupid things, but she's crazy. So I might jump back to Fisk later if something comes to mind, because again, I kind of just talk as things come to my mind about this sort of deal. But before I move away from him, at least temporarily, I want to point out, I think there was one scene where Murdoch and Fisk first really spoke over walkie-talkies. And I don't think that they ever let go of the button. With a walkie-talkie, from my knowledge, and not that I use them a lot, but this is what I know about them. I thought that you held the walkie-talkie in your hand, you pressed the button, and you spoke, and then when you were done speaking, you let go of the button afterward. I could be wrong, but that's what how I thought it worked. And I watched specifically during that scene to see if his thumb would even move a little bit, and no, he just kept his grasp on that walkie-talkie. I don't think that either of them ever let go of the button, so how they were communicating, I have no idea. Now again, moving away from Fisk, at least for now. If I think of something else regarding him, sure, I'll say it, but another thing that stuck with me was Murdoch and Foggy's little fight, because I guess before I really get to that point, I liked Foggy as a character. I thought that Foggy was a great character, and I thought that Murdoch and Foggy, their relationship as, best friends, was really great. I liked seeing the flashbacks. Sometimes flashbacks aren't that awesome, it's just kind of a waste of time, or it's oh, this exposition is so forced kind of stuff. I thought it was amusing seeing the two characters, them going through college and, just hooking up as random roommates, but hitting it off like that, and, seeing their relationship was fun. I like both of them as characters, even though I think that Murdoch kind of mumbles a little too often sometimes, or maybe not mumbles, but he just talks really quietly, and sometimes I know that might have been a character or an actor decision. I think he should have just spoken up sometimes. Anyway, Foggy and Murdoch and their fight. Because at one point, and again, this is a spoiler, but you're in the spoiler section, so it's your own fault. At one point, Murdoch comes back, and he was he was almost dead. He was almost dead. And he was in his apartment, and I think Foggy was there, but then he passed out and whatever. And so then Foggy saw, oh my gosh, this is, the vigilante that I was against, that I thought was crazy and bad is my best friend, and he's almost dead, and why did you keep the secret from me? I thought you were blind, you lied to me all this time and everything. And so, Foggy's hurt. First, again, he's really worried about his friend. He's concerned about his best friend, who he'd known for so long, who he thought was vulnerable because he was blind and everything. And then he finds him almost dead, all bloody and everything like that. Finds out that he's been going out on his own at night, fighting these big whatever battles. And then there's just the fact that he felt he was lied to. He felt he had been betrayed by Murdoch and all of that. And so, I see his understanding. I hope that my rambling here has showed that, I get where he's coming from. But I thought that Foggy I felt like he exaggerated or overreacted a bit. And of course, I can't really put myself in that situation, but I've tried to imagine if my friends ended up being like that. Like, if I found out that my best friend was, a vigilante like that, and he told me, even though I have this disability, I've known every time you lied, I'd be like, wow, really? And you're still friends with me? Wow, you're an amazing friend then. Or, things like that. I can read your mind, I just never told you. Really? And you still hang out with me, you're not creeped out or anything. That's awesome. We're destined to be besties for life. That's kind of how I feel I would react, where it's more like amazement. Of course I'd be worried because they showed up almost dead, but I don't think I'd be that angry with them, as angry as Foggy was. And that seriously impacted the relationship in this series. And again, because each episode is an hour long, I'll admit, and because I watched them back to back to back to back, I finished it really quickly. I forget where everything happened or how long everything actually took as far as episodes are concerned, but they were not talking to each other for a good little while. And it made me kind of upset. And it kind of reminded me of Harry Potter and, and Ron Weasley in particularly the Goblet of Fire, or later on dealing with Hermione. But it's just angst, and it's stop it, you're friends, make up and hug or something. But yeah, that part annoyed me a little bit. Because again, I see reasoning, but a little too much reaction, I thought. And not to say that because I can't imagine, it doesn't mean that other people wouldn't genuinely react that way. Because, I have my own limited experience as a person. I have a different mindset than other people, just because, people to people, we vary, of course, because everyone's unique. So I can't say that he overreacted. Maybe that was the perfect reaction for the character that Foggy was. But to me, it seemed like an overreaction, and it shouldn't have dragged on as long as it should have. That's what I thought. Of course, it served its purpose in the plot, but yeah. So actually, I think that was my biggest complaint of the entire series, was just that, when Murdoch showed up all bloody and Foggy learned that it was his best friend playing the vigilante, I think that was my biggest complaint, that it seemed like an overreaction and that it took too long for them to reconcile. Because I feel like if you were concerned about your best friend, you would stick with him more, you'd be like, yeah, you make sure to call me before you rush off. But instead he just shunned him for the longest time, even though Murdoch was continuing to do that. And again, I can understand, if that's happening and you really are concerned for your friend, you might distance yourself because you're like, I can't stop you, I know that, and losing you would just be too hard, this is too hard on me. Even with this understanding, I just felt bad. Really all it was, I just didn't like it as much as I probably should have. I don't know. But really, for having that be my biggest complaint of the series, that's pretty good. And there are other little things, when his mentor Stick showed up, and Stick was just kind of a jerk bag kind of deal. It was weird that he showed up. The only real two reasons I feel like he showed up was because, it did help advance the plot. And it just tied Murdoch's backstory together a little bit more, because we see through his backstory that oh yeah, I had this mentor and he taught me when I was freaking out, how to actually, harness my abilities and use them to my advantage kind of thing, where I could own my life instead of having it own me sort of deal. But Stick was just a mean kind of character, and it was so sad in the flashback when Murdoch's oh, I made this for you, and it was from his ice cream cone. And Stig is all, yeah, we're done here, that's it, I can't teach you, I thought I saw something in you, but I was wrong, and then he just leaves. It made me feel really bad because, Murdoch was just a kid at the time, and he'd lost his father, and then Stig had kind of stepped in and filled that role, and then as soon as Murdoch felt comfortable enough to treat Stig like a father, give him a gift like that, he was just turned down and left alone again. It was just sad. And again, it has been a while since I've actually seen the series, and there might have been a bigger role than just advancing the plot and tying his backstory up a little bit more. I do get, at that time, Murdoch needed a little bit more of a push, but it might have been able to happen a different way. it almost felt weird to add that. And while we're on that note, what Stick actually came for was because he asked for Murdoch's help in doing something, and apparently he wanted to go and assassinate some kid who I assume was special. I have no idea why the kid was special. I don't remember them saying anything else about it in the series. I just remember apparently kids like that were rare. But I have no idea why he was special, or how rare they were, or what it was that he could do. There might be a tie-in in like the Daredevil comics, but I'm not talking about the comics. I'm talking about this series on Netflix. And so if the series was going to include it, and in such a manner, not just like as a little, you know, like Easter egg kind of thing, but they actually like included it as at least an episode's plot, you know? It was kind of weird that they didn't follow up on that, and maybe they did again, but I certainly don't remember anything. But that's about it. Right now, at least, nothing else is coming to mind. I mean, I touched on, you know, Fisk and, like, his motivations. I didn't really get it. Touched on Foggy, you know, in Murdoch's fight. Stick, his wife being crazy, the radio, you know, other little things. But overall, it was good. I liked the characters that I think you were supposed to like. I disliked the characters I thought you were supposed to dislike. Some of the, you know, bad guys, it's like, it was good to see, you know, some of their history a little bit more and understand where they were coming from. So not every bad guy was like, oh, I'm evil because evilness, mustache, you know, but some of them you could relate to a little bit, and that was better. You know, it's nice when you can have evil characters like Loki, for instance, where you're like, you know, you're not so bad and also very attractive. But with all of that said, I do recommend this show. Again, it's TV mature. It does have some gruesome scenes. Like, this is a dark superhero kind of show. It's not as happy as the old stuff used to be. It's, you know, Dark Knight trilogy-esque. So just be prepared for that if you're going into this. Thank you guys for watching, and we're going to call it here. So with all that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, of course, feel free to leave a like, comment if you're new, even subscribe. It means a lot. It really helps me out, and I would love to have you guys. So, tune in next time for my next video. Until then, take care. Cue outro, go!